Well, hello everyone from Canberra, and well, this is my second live streaming that I've done and my first solo one. So we're going to get some teething mistakes here, I can see that, but it's good to actually be doing this with you, because from my first time in Parliament 20 years ago, I had to rely on the media to get my message out to you, or I travelled the country quite extensively holding meetings so I could speak to the public personally and talk to you about matters and issues. And it was my way of connecting with you and listening to you, which has been very important. Now, having this facility available to me, I can speak directly to you. But what we're going to do today is I'll talk to you about bills and things that are actually going to happen, what's coming up. But also I'm going to open it up for questions, so you can actually ask me questions. So I've got my iPad here, and so I'll be looking at your questions if you wanted to ask me anything. Well, tomorrow is the second last week of Parliament sitting for the year. So we start tomorrow, we work through till Friday morning, then we go back for the weekend and we come back the following week. So Parliament will finish on the 1st of December till next year, around about February. Well, it's going to be an extremely big week, and tomorrow, if you don't know, Rod Culleton, my Senator for Western Australia, that will be coming up, so in the High Court tomorrow for a directions hearing. And also I'm of the belief it's actually going to be on whether he can stand, or he's going to be facing bankruptcy charges as well. So it's going to be very interesting what's going to happen with regards to Rod Culleton. We've so some of the things that are going to come up this week, what I'm expecting, is the Registered Organisations Bill. So it's called the ROCS Bill. And I think it's important to actually support the government with regards to this. And what it means is that you have organisations, there's about 130 companies in Australia, around about that, and they actually take membership fees from people. Well, it's basically making the directors on the boards accountable for the members' fees. And I think it needs to be reined in, and I think there does need to be accountability. And I will be supporting the government as far as that bill goes. Even the Labor Party does agree that, you know, something needs to be done about it, what's happened in the past. What I'm wanting to ask the government also in a question tomorrow, when I ask my question on the floor of Parliament, is to do about the family law. This would be about one of the biggest issues that comes across my desk, and I'd say every other member of Parliament, and that was the case even 20 years ago. I don't think it's been addressed, and I will be asking where was the report that was done but a couple of years ago. That report has not been released, and I'd like to see the recommendations with regards to that. I gave a promise, a commitment to the people prior to the election that I wanted to do something about family law, and I think it's very important that we do. So that's something else I'll be following up. Some of the other issues is about halal certification. Now, I've spoken to Kira Lee Smith, if you remember her. She stood for the state of New South Wales for the Senate under ALA. Now, I had a talk with Kira Lee, and she brought it to my attention also. There was a Senate inquiry into halal certification. Now, that was December last year. Again, recommendations were brought down, but nothing has been done about it. I will be raising that issue as well, because I think they should, and we should be demanding of the Parliament to start implementing those recommendations, because I just do not agree with halal certification. Something needs to be done about it, and that's the feeling that I have from many Australians, that they are not happy about it. So I'll just see if there's any questions that have come through from you. Lost here. I don't think so, unless it's my technique at looking at these things. Right. Anyway, I know there's some comments coming in. I haven't been able to actually have a look at these. I'll just check that. Right, Jane saying end the temporary visas. What's your views on D? Jason behind. I'm just trying to look at some of these questions. There's a lot coming through. Class action against Mr. Turnbull. Right, this one here from Shane, 457 and the 417 visas. I've been talking about the 457 visas for the last, thanks. I've been talking about 457 visa holders. Yes, it does need to be reined in. It's quite amazing that now Bill Shorten is actually talking about reining in 457 visa holders yet. They went up to the highest to approximately 126,000 a year under Labor. So it does need to be addressed. 457 visa holders, and if you remember, what happened was people coming under 457 visa holders, now it was brought to my attention from that, they then get what's classed as a 186 visa holder. So a lot were paying about $25,000 to $30,000 to companies to put them on the books. And if they were actually on the books for 2 years, they then get automatic residency in Australia. Now a scam was going on because once they're actually, say the company said, we can't employ you any further after the first few weeks, they then still got to get automatic residency in Australia. Now I think that's wrong, and it is a loophole that needs to be changed. The 457 visa holders, hairdresser, masseur, you've got these people taking up these professions that many Australians would like to have these jobs. So I think it's a scam that's going on. They need to be, the door needs to be shut on this. I have no problems with skilled workers coming into Australia that Australians can't, provide those services for these companies. No problems about it. But what is happening, even on the ships, Australian ships, 457 visa holders, they're all foreigners working in these jobs. Even in the mining sector, there's a lot of 457 visa holders that Australians can't even get a look in the door. So it's not good enough. You've still got high numbers coming into Australia, and I think that the government has to start addressing this. Australians should be given the opportunity to get these jobs, but what I have been told as well, if you are looking for someone to fill a position and they're saying, well, you must advertise it in the paper. Yes, they do. They advertise it. But there's no follow-up. Where's the follow-up to say that you've actually interviewed people, you couldn't find anyone that you wanted? All the specifications are, excuse me, is that you've actually advertised. That's as far as it goes. And then you say, well, no one's turned up for the job, so therefore that gives me the right to bring in someone from overseas. It's not good enough. So these are things that I will be asking on the floor of Parliament. I'll just see if there's any other questions that are actually coming in. Thank you. Doug says, make farmers employ Aussies. Totally agree with you, Doug. Excuse me. I'm going to talk to you about the backpacker tax. Now, Jackie Lambie has put up an amendment to the backpacker tax for 10.5%. The government is pushing for 19%. The Labor Party supports Jackie Lambie's amendment, as I do. I'll explain to you why. Backpackers don't pay a tax at the moment, so they don't pay any tax at all. Now, Australians don't start paying a tax till about $18,200 before Australians start paying tax as well. But a lot of the farmers rely on backpackers to do the work, to pick their fruit. And if the backpackers didn't come in and take up this slack, the farmers wouldn't have their fruit picked, and that's a known fact. I've spoken to many farmers from North Queensland to the Sunshine Coast to Victoria and in South Australia, and they're saying they cannot get Australians to do the work. They are unreliable, they won't go in and they won't pick the fruit and they won't do the job. So farmers are going to be destitute if they don't get the backpackers. Also, why I'm backing the 10.5% is that New Zealand has a 10.5%, and also I understand Canada's is about 12%. Now, what I'm concerned about, and so are the farmers, that if we go with the government's 19%, you may not get the backpackers coming into Australia, so the farmers won't have anyone to pick the fruit. So what I'm proposing is that let's go with the 10.5%. Make sure that we don't deter backpackers from coming into Australia. Then in 2 years' time, if they're still coming and the farmers agree with it, then look at putting up the backpacker tax in increments to 15%. But also remember, if we charge them this tax, it's from the first dollar that they earn. Now, most backpackers will only earn about $13,000 anyway. $13,000, maybe up to $20,000. So that's not a lot of money. They also spend usually all the money that they make in the towns that they visit. They then will become future tourists because they'll want to bring out their families later in life. So they are tourists in our country. So there's reasons why we need backpackers here. But another thing also, I want to see Australians who think it's a way of life to sit on the welfare system and not go out to work. They have to say, you know, we have to get these people working. So when we can get them working, that they should be going out and filling these jobs that the backpackers are doing, we can't cruel the backpackers because farmers will fold, they will go under, and they've said to me, Pauline, if we aren't assured of backpackers coming here to Australia, we won't be planting our strawberries because we will have no one to pick them. So please, this is what I'm considering, is that we have to have assurance of it. And there's another thing. The government brings in about 195,000 backpackers a year. They have not had any, records of how much work they do, how much money they earn. There's no records of that whatsoever, so they have no idea. And actually I was criticised for backing Jackie Lambie's amendment to this at 10.5%, saying, well, where am I going to get the other $240 million to, you know, for this money that we're going to make out of it? And I said to Scott Morrison, well, I'll tell you where you can start. Cut the ABC, cut the SBS, cut pensions, the politicians, you know, wages, all the bureaucrats, what they get, and as a matter of fact also the foreign aid. So I think there's a lot of other areas we can cut back on instead of the backpackers tax at the moment. So that's where I stand on that one, so you know. There's another one here from Daniel. Daniel says about the apex gangs have to go. Totally agree with you, Daniel. Melbourne's out of control with the gangs down there. I had a meeting with the president of the police union, and when the gangs were rampant on the streets at the Moomba Festival, the police were told, don't go in. We won't do anything about them now. We'll catch them on CTC footage. These APEC gangs are actually from refugees or people who've been brought into the country, and islanders as well. So they're running rampant, then they feel they can do whatever they want to do. And I've seen the fear on the faces of the shop owners when they come in there and start smashing up their shops and taking whatever they want to in jewellery. And I think it's so wrong. Our governments have to start getting tough, and they should be telling our police force, it's not a service, it's a force, to start dealing with this so our streets are safe for people. Australians, this is not good enough. This is not Africa. This is not South America or some of these other countries around the world. This is Australia, and it's our duty to actually start getting tough on these people, and if they are not Australian citizens or of dual citizenship, then I suggest get them out of the country. We don't want them here and filling up our prisons. Yes, Lena, as you said, no 457 visas. We do need some 457 visa holders, by all means, especially in those areas where we don't have that skilled labour here. But another thing that I want to talk about is I spoke to a nurse who actually took long leave in the nursing profession. She had about 5 years off. Now, she said to actually get back into work again, she had to do a course, and a 3-month course in a university. Now, she lives in Brisbane, but the universities are actually in Sydney or in Rockhampton. There's only 3, and a cost of around about $12,000. To do your course in nursing course is around about that much money for a period of 3 years. But to refresh a course, to spend that sort of money and to go leave your family and have to go to Sydney. It's not good enough. And we're bringing in too many nurses from overseas. We should be actually looking after our nurses, especially in rural and regional areas, who want to get back into the workforce and need to do refresher courses. They should be opening up the hospitals so they can do it in the hospitals. But apparently she's saying it is extremely hard to do a refresher course in a hospital, and usually they'll do it for 3 months with no pay. So I think we need to start protecting our nurses, ensure that they can do their refresher courses, and at not a great expense, because I want our Australian men and women in the nursing profession and not overseas nurses coming in filling these positions. I don't think it's hard, but these are just a couple of the trades, as I said, on the boats, on our shipping vessels, everything there. We've got foreigners filling the positions should belong to Australians, so we've got to change that. Another question here I have from Marshall: do you support firearm owners and the sports shooters? Certainly do, Marshall. No problem about that whatsoever. Always have. And look, as I said many years ago when John Howard changed the laws on guns, it was the innocent people, law-abiding Australians, that actually had to get rid of their guns, and the laws changed. I've got no problems with tightening up the laws, that's fine. But I think Australians have grown up with guns, especially in rural and regional areas. I'm not talking about cities, but I'm talking about rural and regional areas. What's happened is we've got more criminals out there with guns because they're going to get them. Let's be honest about it. They're bringing them through the ports, they're actually coming through the post offices, the guns, so they're out there in our society. But I think it's a right of an Australian, law-abiding Australian, to have their gun, and I've got no problem with it. I think there should be proper training by all means, and that is part of the legislation, part of the laws in each state is slightly different, but I think the way it is now, I've got no problem with it. Another one here from Ingrid. Kiwis are Anzacs. Please make it easier for us to become citizens. Ingrid, I hear it all the time about the Kiwis in Australia and how they are, finding it difficult to become Australian citizens. And I know many Kiwis have been in Australia, law-abiding citizens. They've actually paid their taxes all these years and they get no assistance, no help. And yes, I think it's wrong when we can have people come into Australia within 4 years from these other countries. They are not compatible with our culture, our way of life. They can get the Australian citizenship, yet someone from New Zealand can't. I know it's hard and it's tough, and I suppose in a lot of ways too, because New Zealand is so close to us, we don't need, we shouldn't drain New Zealand of their citizenship, the people coming over here. But what I've heard lately is there's more Australians now leaving to go over to New Zealand because it's a lot cheaper to live there, yeah, our cost of living is just blown out of proportion. But Ingrid, I do hear what you're saying. I speak to a lot of Kiwis. Actually, if you go to my website, onenation.com.au, I have got a policy up there on what I think the process should be for Kiwis, New Zealanders, to become Australian citizens. So have a look at that and let me know what you think about that. There's another one here from Alex about child support. Alex, I have been talking about child support even back 20 years ago. Child support to me, I believe, is unfair and it's unworkable, and I think it needs to be addressed. Now, this is what I want to address in the family law issues right across the board. The whole lot needs to be addressed, which is fair. And I think that what is happening, a lot of people who are the non-custodial parents who are paying the child support actually throw the jobs in. They don't go to work anymore, purely for the fact is they can't survive because of the amount of child support that they have to pay. So therefore, they give up, they are despondent. If we had a fairer child support, I believe a lot of non-custodial parents would pay their fair share in child support. Make it a fairer system, and therefore the ones that don't get the child support, or who do have the responsibility of rearing the children and looking after them, that they'll get their bit of support and help from the non-custodial parent. But I think, in all fairness, I think there is, you only have one mum, these kids only have one mum and one dad, right? No one can ever really replace them, as long as they're good parents and you know, they love their kids, and I think that's what it's all about. And I wish parents would get over their, you know, the differences and their hatred towards each other and just understand what these children are going through, right? And try and make an agreement between yourselves so that you can both share the love and watch your kids grow up and talk about the issues, about their, you know, when will you see, you know, share your children and growing up in school and different things that they're doing. And I just, instead of being dragged through the courts, because no one wins from it. I know, I'm talking from experience. I've been there. I know what you're talking about with child support. You know, I had to rear my kids totally by myself because my ex-husbands never paid the child support. So I understand what a lot of you are feeling out there. And I'm trying to come up with a fairer system for everyone, right across the board. I'm not supporting just women alone. I'm not just supporting men. I am actually wanting to support the children, what's fair, right across the board for both men and women, and mums and dads. And not only that, it's extended families as well. It's grandmas, granddads, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, everyone that's caught up in this, and it affects so many families. And I see the hurt and pain, and I know that there are people suiciding over this. So let's try and find the answers sooner rather than later. And I'm sick of the politicians just sweeping it under the carpet. No one wants to deal with it because it's too hard. It's not going to be easy. But I'm working with the organisations, and I'm speaking to the law councils. I'm speaking to different interested groups. I've had a meeting just last week with Hetty Johnson from the Braveheart organisation. So we are trying to work towards it to find the answers, and I think it's needs addressing sooner rather than later. There's another one here from, let me see, Mark, ultimate elderly care and refugee moving in. Mark, I haven't. I brought it to the attention of the public when it was brought to my attention. I don't know what's happening down there. I wasn't impressed with it. Here you have an aged care facility, and they've actually put part of it aside for refugees to actually live in this aged care facility. And my understanding, there was a waiting list of around about 75 to 80 people waiting to get into the aged care facility. This is what it is, an aged care facility, not for refugees. So I just hope this doesn't become the norm throughout Australia. But the Minister from Victoria, he actually approved it and reduced the age from over 65 to under 65 to allow them to take in the refugees. It's I don't agree with it. Brett says, what's your take on 18C? I don't agree with 18C. What they're saying is to offend, intimidate, humiliate or insult anyone. As a lot of people say, if I told you, you know, I don't like the colour of your hair, I don't like the colour of your skin, you know, they can take it as an offence. An offence is, you know, how you perceive something. I'm probably from the old school. My attitude is, oh, let it go over the top of your head. Don't be so precious about things. But what it's done is shut down your right to have an opinion, to have a say. And I think if I was extreme and I was saying comments out there, don't you think that you, the public, would be my judge? Why should I have someone sitting in some ivory tower telling me what I should be saying or not saying? I think if the public would judge me, and they would certainly tell me whether what I'm saying is offensive or not. So I think we've become too precious. It's like when I went to school, the old saying was, sticks and stones may break your bones, but names will never hurt you. And I think we need to start to get over it, grow up, and toughen up a bit in our society. You know, a lot has happened to me over the years, and I've been called a lot. And I remember, you know, the elders called me a pig in mud, and I remember Tim Fisher, the former deputy Prime Minister of this country, said I was a witch and I should be burnt at the stake. So I've had a lot said about me. But when it comes down to it, it's all about you, how you feel about yourself and what's in here. And my attitude is I have my own self-esteem and self-respect. So I will not allow anyone to put me down. If anyone's going to do it, I will judge myself and I'll look in the mirror. So that's how I feel about this thing. 18 seat, no. I'm supporting David Leyonhjelm and Cory Bernardi and others who say, let's get rid of it. And they'll have my support. Another one here from Jeremiah, more full-time jobs, less casual jobs, we need more security. Jeremiah, I totally agree with you. I think what's happened over the period of time with the jobs, now I'll go back to when I was growing up. When I left school at 15, I could have my pick of 3 jobs in one day. And I would walk in one and no, and I'd go to another one, so jobs were readily available in Australia. It was different then because we had a lot of industries, manufacturing, and we didn't have the population that we have these days. And of course, you've got computerised and with IT, that's another thing too. But I think over the years, we've lost our industries and manufacturing through the free trade agreements. And in around about 1975-76, it was called the Lima Declaration. Now, it was agreed with the Western countries of the world, America and New Zealand, Australia, and that we were to forego our industries and manufacturing to third world countries. And we sold them the raw materials and brought back the finished product back from them. That's happened. So this is why we've lost a lot of our industries and manufacturing. Also, what's happened is, I've got to say, people in business, and I was a small business person as well, so to employ staff now is a lot harder. So what's happening is you've got to go to employment agencies, so it costs you a lot to actually employ people. But the problem is, if someone is not good enough in the job that they do for you, it's harder to sack them. You can't sack them. And what's happening is a lot of people who the employer doesn't wish to employ any longer, they can't get rid of them. So what happens is they are actually having to pay them to get rid of them. And that's a shame. So until we address that, a lot of small businesses and others are doing the work themselves. They're not employing people, or they're putting them on casual basis so they can easily say, listen mate, I haven't got any more work for you, so I'm going to let you go. The laws in this country need to be changed. And I know that if we were to actually lighten it up a little bit, more people would be put on full time. There's too much casual employment and underemployment in Australia, and it does need to be looked at. But a lot of businesses out there, they can't afford it, and it's brought a lot of businesses undone. They've had to pay out these people. And I spoke to a bakery, and they put this girl on. She actually broke the glass. She couldn't do a job. She wasn't turning up, and it cost them $7,000 to actually make her redundant. Took them through the courts, and that's what it was. They couldn't sack her, and that's the problem. Another question here is coming from, right, Linda says, stop Gina from buying Kidman property. Linda, the property, the Kidman station, as I said, Gina Reinhardt will own about 2/3 of the property, 33%, one third, 33%, a third will actually go to the Chinese who wants to buy this property, and Gina will own 2/3 of the property. At the moment, the Kidman station is actually 34% foreign owned, and it has the owners of it. There's about just over 50 owners of the Kidman station, and 34% of that is actually foreign owned. Now, that's been up for sale for the last 18 months, and there has not been any Australian buyers. There's a group of 4, but they've pulled out of the sale. Gina has said that she wants to improve the property. It's been run down. She wants only Australian workers on it, and she actually wants to put a lot of money into it and make it a bigger business than what it is now. Also, she said that if she can't buy it with the Chinese ownership, it won't be passed, that she will buy it outright herself. I'd rather see Gina Reinhardt as the majority owner in this, and I asked her advisor personally, I said, will Gina ever sell out to the Chinese? She said no, she will never sell any further interest in Kinman Station to the Chinese, so that's not the case. So I would dearly love to see the property 100% Australian owned, and I hope that Gina does turn around and buy it herself 100%. But if not, I think she'll own more of it Australian owned than what it currently is. Robert says ban the burqa. With you all the way, Robert. No problems about that at all. I have spoken about that. That's part of my policy. It's quite amazing that both the two former Prime Ministers, Julia Gillard and also Tony Abbott, said they find it confronting. Well, so do I. And I think it's un-Australian. And I don't like to see the burqa on our streets. The burqa is the full covering and just the eyes showing, and then you have the niqab, which is fine. But what a lot of people don't understand is a lot of the Muslim countries around the world, and you've got Tunisia and some of the other countries that are predominantly Muslim, they have banned the burqa. They don't even allow them to wear it. And you've got countries that is Spain and Italy and France and Portugal, and these countries have actually banned the burqa. And what they're saying is there is more assimilation into the society by banning the burqa because they feel part of this society. So I wish we would learn from other countries and start to realise this is segregation in our society. It is not our way of life. And what I hear from many Australians, and I agree with them, if someone walks into a bank or a building with a helmet or a balaclava on there covering their face, they are told to take it off or they're out of the bank. Yet we don't treat anyone wearing the burqa the same. And I am so angry about someone getting a driver's licence in this country with wearing the burqa. So where is the identification here? So ban the burqa, totally agree. I'll just take a couple more questions and we're going to wind this up. And I do appreciate your responses here, and I hope I'm answering your questions to your satisfaction. This is 600 Australian flags too many to have inside my house? Rowan, I think that's fantastic. Wow, patriotic Australian. Who am I to tell you how many is enough to have in your house? You know what, mate? It's your home. And if you love your 600 Australian flags, good on you. I wish that many more houses out there would actually get out and fly just one Australian flag. And I know some councils and people have been told to take down their Australian flag. And you tell them from me, if anyone tells you to take down your Australian flag, tell them where to go, because this is Australia. We should be flying the flag. Be proud of who you are. This is Australia. So, no, good on you, Rowan. Yeah, Matthias, says, medicinal cannabis, please update us. All right. What's happened with medicinal cannabis, and I've actually been supporting this since 2013, I think it's very important to have it here. The government is now passing that it is legal in Australia for medicinal cannabis. They're actually call for people who wish to grow it, so to legalise it here in Australia. So it will be grown. I think there's going to be possibly about 6 places in Australia who will be allowed to actually grow the medicinal cannabis, and then it's up to the states. Now, I asked a question on the floor of Parliament because the Queensland state government were actually going to allow for not from the real plant but synthetic medicinal cannabis. Now, after I asked that question on the floor of Parliament, the Queensland government, they got concerned about it, so they have now allowed for the real plant to be supplied in Queensland, not the synthetic rubbish that I believe it is. My understanding is it can, well, may not be as good for the patient. So anyway, it will be grown, and they're looking at people now who are putting in submissions to be able to grow it and have the medicinal cannabis. So a lot of people are just waiting for this to be available to the public, and I hope that's not too far down the track, hopefully next year. Bobby says, you kill someone, it should be death penalty. Bobby, there's, I think what we need to do in Queensland is truth in sentencing, and I believe that if you are given a life sentence, life means life in prison, and they have that in New South Wales. So if you've given a life sentence, you are kept in prison for the rest of your natural life. And in Queensland it's around about 18 years. I'm sorry, you take someone's life, it's not good enough, and especially for those heinous crimes, I find it very hard to have these people there costing the taxpayer. But at the moment I'd say, look, life means life, and they should never be released from prison. Do you support self-defence reforms so that people can defend themselves in their own home? Well, yes, I do. I certainly do. I've got to be honest with this. If anyone was to come into my home with the intentions of doing myself harm, or my family or anyone, I have a right to defend myself. So yes, I do believe in support for that. Well, just we'll take this here. Tristan, taxes are killing business. The ATO wants money before a business earns it. Please fix tax. Tristan, yes, and our whole tax system needs to be reviewed, and a fairer tax system. I remember 20 years ago I raised the fact that multinationals were not paying their fair share of tax in Australia. Isn't it amazing now, the last few years, the major political parties coming out and said multinationals aren't paying their share of tax. So they addressed it and think they would actually bring in $3.9 billion over 3 years. I'm telling you now, we're talking about a couple of $100 billion in taxes that are not paid in this country by multinationals and foreign companies that don't pay tax here, and that ends up in other countries, because we are a signatory to what's called the 1953 Double Taxation Agreement. Our whole tax system is unfair, and I believe it needs throwing out and bringing a fairer tax system right across the board for everyone and get this country moving, because we can't afford it anymore. We haven't got the money to build infrastructure and dams and roads and railways and build hospitals and schools, and we are becoming one of the highest taxed nations in the world. So, and people cannot afford it, and the cost of living is rising more and more. Our standard of living is dropping, and people are struggling to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table for their families, and it's not good enough. Last one. Yes, I must also tell you, we are finishing Parliament on Thursday, then we're going up to Rockhampton. Now, we're going out to the reef, and we are going to talk about the reef and having a look at it to see, you know, is the reef really dying, or are we being, you know, fed a furphy? We want the truth. We want to know what's happening. And I want to protect our environment, have no doubt about it whatsoever. But I will not be lied to with people with their own agendas. Now, that's what we're going up to investigate with Malcolm Roberts, who's very much on to about climate change. Also, don't forget that we are live streaming on Friday night from Emu Park, which is about 50 kilometres north east of Rockhampton. and we're going to be talking to some servicemen and ex-servicemen about PTSD. So this needs to be spoken about. We cannot allow it to go on with our servicemen and women that are coming back and suiciding or living on the streets, who are facing depression, alcoholism, drugs, and it's a shame on us as a nation that we are not looking after our former defence personnel. They have signed up to something. They put their lives on the line there to protect us. It's about time we started protecting them. So I hope you join me on live streaming for that on Friday night, because it's a responsibility, not only politicians, but every Australian. That's our responsibility. So I'm hoping that you join in, watch it, get behind us, and I hope that I can come up with some answers with it. We're actually going to have some experts in the area. A couple of suggestions have been put to me how to deal with this, but I want to hear it straight from the defence personnel and hear their stories, and hopefully I can go back knocking on some doors down in Canberra, which I have done already, and try to get the answers. I hope you've enjoyed this and I've answered your questions. What I've always said is I've always wanted to sort of connect with the people. This has never been done before that I'm aware of from a politician. But it's important for you to come on this journey with me, that I explain to you my views, my thoughts, what it's like to be on the floor of Parliament, what legislation's coming up, the impact it will have on you. So as time goes on and I find my feet a little bit more, that I'll be able to explain more things to you, because it's your future. Be informed, and I think we can make it a better country for all of us. Good night.